The man, the best masculine energy, thrills in the face of change, earns, seduces.
My strategy is shutting down, like shut down emotionally, stop talking.
We've all become very good at men, usually as functioning and disassociating from our feelings. We can do it, but the hydra of that pain inside you will find a way out.
It sounds like what you're saying there, we have the man body, but actually then there's this piece of us that's inside that's still emotionally 5 years old.
100%, especially men. We are more afraid of emotional pain than physical. What matters to you in terms of comfort, pleasure, and stability in your life?
Welcome to the Authentic Man podcast. I am your host, David Chambers. This is a podcast for men who want more and less from life. More deep connection, more emotional intelligence, more self-awareness, and more great sex. And less heartache, less conflict, less overthinking, and less stress. Creating dating lives, sex lives, and relationships that are incredible and authentic. My deepest goal is that you, the listener, can take away what you hear in this podcast and apply it to your life so that you can experience greater happiness, transformational growth, deeper relationships, and profound sexual intimacy. I believe that as men, we are capable of so much more depth than we are shown or led to believe. So join me as we get deep into this. Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back to another episode that I've been looking forward to for some time to recording. It's a man who I followed for a long while, and it's a field of work that I feel that I am starting to understand more and more, but I think there's a long journey to that, so I don't really talk about it publicly because it's still my learning still until I integrate that really into what I do. But I'm with a man who I feel is a real expert in this area, has been spending many, many years, which he'll talk to you about, I'm sure, through the podcast. And I'm really looking, like I said, I'm really looking forward to this episode. I've been for a long while. Welcome, Karden. How are you doing?
Thank you, David. I'm doing really well. And I actually loved what you just said because my kind of language for that is I really like to marinate, incubate whatever new field of work, study that I'm into. Like it needs to happen internally. I need to play with its pieces, right? In myself, in real time, in my relationships with my clients. Like I'm totally one of those sort of learning by doing and experiencing. And so I just wanted to say, like, I really honor that process of you being in it, right? And you having your internal experience and experimentation with it, sort of kind of before and the in process as you're sharing it with the world. So I just want to say that, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you. And I thought it'd be beautiful to hear, because I know that, like I said, you have a long history in this work. Like for the listeners, like what is it you do, and what was your journey that kind of brought you to the guise that it's in this time now?
Yeah, I call myself a nervous system medicine practitioner. And that term in particular, I define as the application of nervous system science, trauma science, developmental science, neuroplasticity and the way the brain is wired to use those, that realm of knowledge and those therapeutics specifically to get people unsick. So there's a whole constellation of what are often called mind-body disorders, psychosomatic issues, psychophysiologic disorders, and they range from chronic pain, fibromyalgia, IBS, POTS, post-viral syndromes like long COVID and Lyme. All of these dysfunctions are primarily rooted in dysfunctions of the nervous system, and a nervous system being chronically stuck in a survival state where, since it's trying to basically not die all the time, it's incapable of managing the healthy functioning of our physiology. And secondarily, what's going on in a lot of these instances is what we call conditioned responses. which is as simple as, it's very Pavlovian. I smell bacon and I start to drool, right? I want to eat it. Those same conditioned responses, when people have had a dysregulated nervous system their whole life, create false associations between certain actions, like sitting in the car and low back pain, right? There's nothing threatening or dangerous about sitting in a car, and anything your physio has ever told you about that is actually bullshit. But the brain can be conditioned to make such associations and actually produce real pain. And so as a nervous system medicine practitioner, what I do is I help people undo those things. So concurrently regulate the nervous system so that their brain can actually take care of their body again. And then to undo conditioned responses that are perpetuating certain chronic symptoms and illnesses. So that's how we are now. But how the heck did I get here? Well, the way most people get places, through an enormous amount of pain and suffering. And wrong turns, although every wrong turn turned into the right one. So I have been in this in the field of wellness since I was 22. I'm 40 now. So after college, I took a complete 90-degree turn. Instead of going to Wall Street or law school after my stupidly expensive liberal arts degree, I went to massage therapy school, which was a big WTF from like everyone who knew me. They're like, what are you doing there? And I definitely was the odd man out. But it's what I wanted to learn. Something drew me to it. And I took to it like a fish to water. I loved it. I learned so much. And I was also very good at it. And who doesn't like doing what they're good at, right? So I became an avid body worker, functional movement therapist. And I, for 10 years, had a pretty solid, successful career as a master body worker who had a really good reputation for helping people get them out of pain. And I used to say that I worshiped at the throne of structure and function, right? If you had a low back problem, David, or carpal tunnel, well, then all I need to do is put the Tin Man robot of your body in the right positions, get things that are too tight to loosen up, get things that are too weak to strengthen up, and teach you how to use this body that you inhabit by walking right and lifting right and XYZ, right? And sometimes that worked, David. Worked well enough for me to have a good reputation and make money. And sometimes it didn't fucking work, David. Didn't work. You know, people would be doing their stretches. They'd have cores that had six packs that could stop bullets, RPGs, and they'd still have low back pain, right? And they'd be doing clean movement, and they'd just be incredible athletes, and they'd be great health, and they'd just still be in pain. And maybe more importantly, and very humiliatingly, my low back pain was getting more and more agonizing and more debilitating year after year after year. No matter how clean my movement got, no matter how strong I got, no matter how many hours I spent on my foam rollers and the cross falls. And I was near my wit's end. I was in agony for five uninterrupted months after like the 11th, 100th time I threw out my back. I had not only agonizing pain in my low back, I'd have lightning storms of pain in my groin and testicles. And I'd have shooting stabs of pain go down both legs and stab me in my calves like ice picks. So it just dropped me to the ground out of the blue in pain. It was awful. And during the depths of that pain, when nothing was working and I was entertaining surgery for quote unquote bilateral herniations at L4, L5, I was teaching the anatomy and physiology component of a yoga teacher training in Long Island, New York, which in and of itself was hilariously hypocritical because here I am, an expert teaching how the body works, and I'm in fucking pain. Okay, the irony was not lost on me. And on my friend's, the yoga studio's owner bookshelf was this book. It's this little tiny book that's as thick as my, guys, for those who are listening because you're not watching, the spine of this book is as thick as my index finger. And it's called Healing Back Pain by Dr. John Sarno. And if you see the original copy of this, it's got some like totally generic picture of like some ripped dude's back with like a towel around his, like it's just so ridiculous, right? And I read this, I saw this book on the bookshelf, and David, I fucking rolled my eyes at it with maximum arrogance. Like, what under the fucking sun could this little like book that's clearly just a marketing ploy have to teach me, right? Moreover, because of this guy's ripped back with like his sweat glistening off his paraspinal muscles and like the white towel around his neck, I was like, this is going to just be more dumb exercises, but from the 80s, you know? But here we go. I had to go take crap. And so I wanted something to read, because there's nothing worse than being in the bathroom without good reading material. So my life changed on the toilet, dude. I took that book with me to the commode, okay? And I started reading. And it had nothing to do with exercises. Instead, John Sarno comes out of fucking nowhere and says, are you a tight-assed perfectionist? Are you a type A person who doesn't feel anything? Are you always putting other people before yourself? Are you afraid of what people think of you? Are you always looking after your looks? Are you obsessed with performance and achievement? Well, you probably have low back pain or some other chronic pain. It's like, what? First time ever. So he does two things at once. If you read his book, you often see yourself to a T. You're like, fuck, how does this personality profile fits like a glove, right? Or enough so. And so he does that. And then two, he does this beautiful job of dismantling the orthopedic model of pain. It's just so outrageously inaccurate. And in fact, even though I've been doing that work for 10 years and was really good at it and really smart, I'm also a very open-minded person. And I've always said this, I am not loyal to any system or dogma. I'm loyal to fucking truth and effectiveness, right? And I saw that truth in his book. And not only that, within days of reading his book, my low back pain decreased by almost 90% for the first time in 5 months. And it was simply from reading his book. And after that, I could never go back to the old model of how I was practicing helping people, right? It's like I'd taken a quantum leap. I'd gone from like, it's kind of like, whoa, I've been living in the Matrix and I didn't know it. Meaning I'm like following all these illusionary rules that aren't correct about why so many people are in pain, why so many people are suffering, why so many things are wrong. And now someone has shown me at least a glimmer through a keyhole into how this fucking actually works. And it has everything to do with our brain and our nervous system. And that was about 7 or 8 years ago, David. And ever since, I've completely and totally committed myself to mastering this work of the brain, the nervous system, somatics, meaning embodiment, because that's how you need to engage in part with your brain and nervous system to actually create changes. I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner, which is Peter Levine's remarkable trauma healing method. And I've fused together many types of work to do what I do. So that's how I got here. I got here through my own pain.
It's incredible. Like the, coincidence, if such a thing exists, the coincidence of you being in that yoga school that day and glancing up at that shelf and seeing that book and then needing to go to the toilet to get that book is like, depending on people's religious beliefs, but there's like a divinity that led you to that book in that moment, or maybe the book would have appeared, but it's like it was exactly what you needed at that time in that moment. And it sounds like there was a level of kind of desperation as well, right? It was getting really
David,
serious and really painful.
Every major tipping point in my life has the language divine coincidence, all correct. It's stumbled into me. And I think that there's that greatness in life, our lives are defined, especially as men, as like equal parts being at cause, fucking working hard, intending hard, getting connected to your purpose, vision. Like we got to hustle, but that hustle is in perfect harmony with being at effect, which is that of being willing to receive and being in flow with maybe kind of the general riverbanks of what this universe wants you to fucking be doing. And if you are too much into the flow, then you're in too much at effect and you have no ground of being or agency, you're not going to get anywhere. But if all you're trying to be is be ground, be agency, be the go-getter, if you're on too far of maybe the Goggins spectrum, then you're going to be ground to fucking dust eventually. I don't know how I've achieved a relative good relationship to that sweet spot, but I have. And so, I'd like to take credit exclusively for what I've achieved, but no way, that fucking book stumbled into me, David. Did I seize it once it stumbled into me? Fuck yeah, I did. But it stumbled into me. I did not find it. It found me.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say, like, for men that to find that sweet spot and balance, because there's so much that is out there for men that's like hustle, grind. Alex Hormozi, I'm not a big follower of his, but I just remember seeing an interview of him where he's basically like, I work all the time and I only really stop working when I'm so tired that I can't work anymore. And then I go to the gym and then I go back to work. It's this, like, we have to keep pushing, grinding. And I guess
I unfollowed Hormozi a week ago. I did. He did a post that was just over the line for me. And, I think maybe we do need extreme representations for us to look at to kind of calibrate to where we need to be. But that's amazing you brought that up. Like, thumbs down to that fucking method.
And I guess you see the impact on people's nervous system of that method, and particularly men, because like we are taught to like be in act, all the kind of masculine kind of traits is like being action, being moving forward, give direction. And I imagine this leads to some pretty negative effects in our lives and in our nervous systems.
100%. When you look at sort of the archetypes of masculine energy, it's the paradox of masculine energy is that it provides structure and leadership, but it endlessly craves freedom and no burdens. And everything in the universe and life is yin and yang, right? It's light and dark with a little bit in each. And the most important thing, guys, is to really recognize when you might be having if you got a complete deficit or none of a certain form of being, like freedom, stillness, being open to that flow, and you're just grinding, like, I can tell you're doing it wrong. I can just because there just isn't any balance or nuance in it. And when you actually start, on whether you want to or not, listening to the language of your body and seeing how it's actually feeling about that endless grind, that endless striving, it's going to give you some pretty significant messages that it's not digging that, right? And also, like, we're smarter, like, not harder, right? Another thing that's supposed to be asking quality is this clarity, not just how hard can I work, but how hard, how best can I see the way forward? And if all you ever see it through is work more, wow, that's a pretty narrow lens. Maybe that was a little too esoteric. Yeah. I'll try to get more specific for you there.
No, I guess I was going to ask a very specific question, actually, is how does it show up in our lives? How does it show up in a man's life, in his body, that he is like just grinding too hard? He's gone all the way over to one side and he's just like all go, all push, all energy, all movement forward. And he isn't tending to his system well enough.
We're going to do it right now. We'll do it my style. David, close your eyes. Any listener, close your eyes. And my invitation for you, when I ask you to close your eyes and listen to your body, that is not the cue to calm down. I didn't say that. I said, close your eyes and notice your body. So that's first cue. Okay. Second cue is just as if you were a bird watcher, just an observer. Notice the area around your chest, your heart, your breath. And first and foremost, be curious about that area. And what I want you to be curious about are simple things. Full or empty? Open or closed? Constricted or supple? Does it feel like my own diaphragm has to work to breathe against my chest? Or does my chest make room for my breath? Do I feel like I am open and capable of projecting power from my chest? Or do I feel like something's on my fucking chest? Do I feel trapped? Or do I feel expansive? Now, staying here, noticing your chest, David and any listener, think about some shit you have to do and notice what your body does. Emails, text messages, paying bills, going for the shop, hitting a deadline. Now, if you're a man, you never even felt this before, that's one. But moving on, if you're alive, you'll notice shit just got maybe a little tighter, got a little heavier. That's not a body in power. That's a body using its power to survive. So let's come out of this, David. Let's see, we're actually going to do a second part, but that's where I just wanted to go first. Like, that's the secret language of the body, folks. That's when you start attuning to your body to actually know what your autonomic nervous system is saying, which is, do I feel like I'm a fucking lion hunting? Or do I actually feel like prey and I'm working all the time? I look like a tiger, but I'm not. Share with me a little bit, David, about what you noticed or what you think of that. That feeling and kind of this little metaphor I'm doing.
Yeah. So what I noticed for me was my belly's reasonably soft, but my chest is a bit tight. Like when you said, does it feel like someone's sitting on your chest? There's definitely that feeling. And then when I brought in all the things that I need to do and take care of, there was like a rush of energy, and it was like it came in and just tightened up a little bit more. And yeah, when you talked about feeling like prey, it's like what's chasing me around is like all the things I need to do, all the bits and pieces of my business that are not in the way that I want it to be, or the frustrations I'm feeling about that.
Yeah. And that's the thing, David. We then have the illusion, we cover that in the costume of drive, of overachievement, of excelling, of purpose, of Hormozy just making money to make money without, any kind of meaning, right? Because we are actually feeling like prey. And there's this feeling in our body of a lack of safety, of a lack of okayness, of a lack of fullness, of a lack of stillness, of a lack of love. You name it. There's a lot of lacks going on. And I just did a post that says we're, especially men, by the way, we are more afraid of emotional pain than physical pain. And most of our life is being driven by that. And we don't even know it because we've locked up and thrown away the key to what we can't feel. But it's driving us. Okay? And FYI, you get a lot of things done. You can get a lot of shit done having your life driven by feeling like prey. Fear is an extraordinary motivator, and not trying to feel pain is an extraordinary motivator. You can build fucking rockets like Elon Musk, all built on doing anything you can to not feel the absolute awful fucking well of empty shit inside you and lack of love. It changes the world, trauma does. All right? So how do you know if you're in that state as a man? You can look at your behaviors. You can look how much time you're actually finding stillness and freedom. You can do what we just did and actually tune into your body and start getting a sense of the fact that you feel like trapped or escape or fleeing prey all the time, but you've deluded yourself into thinking that, that's achievement. And the other thing we didn't touch on, but it's also like, what's your thoughtscape doing? Are you always thinking about work? Are you always thinking about the future? Are you always thinking about more ways you can become efficient and life hack? Do you realize that instead of using life and productivity hacks to seize more life and time and freedom back, you're just using it to stuff more shit in the same amount of time? That's fucking bonkers. Tim Ferriss will punch you in the face, right? Because a real man, that's it too. I can't say that out loud. Sorry, let me take that back. A calibrated man who's honoring all the different parts of himself, containment, leadership, purpose, mission, and achievement, is also honoring freedom, presence, stillness, ease, comfort for himself and for those that love us.
And I imagine some of the listeners are thinking, it's like, how do we bring that into our lives as men when we live in this world that's like still feels like it's 100 miles an hour and stimulus always coming, always something else to do?
Okay, let me write another book, David. But short of writing another book is so multifaceted. First, really is I'm going to go with pure. I'm going to just, let's say, start with sustenance, right, and basics and baselines. We do need to find the most efficient way through our gifts to make the income, say that flat, that we need to live a simple life. That's goal number one, right? So yes, the world has a velocity, but when you really boil shit down, you need to be making enough money off the thing you do within a certain amount of time so that you can afford a life that takes care of your health and comfort. Now, by the way, if you are pursuing always a fancy life, okay, that's one place where you can already start making a choice where, whoa, how do I get out of the hamster race or keeping up with the Joneses? Well, you don't have to become a goddamn pauper and just eat ramen, right? But you have to get really clear. No one's really clear. Most people are chasing bullshit. Like, what matters to you in terms of comfort, pleasure, and stability in your life? And not from a place of fear, just from a place of like wholeness and clarity. My wife and I are really good at that. Just today, we were talking about how when you know very clearly what you want and what you don't want, you don't waste time, energy, thought, and prana, one, going after things that you don't want. You just have that energy to go after what you do want. And we yield the positive feedback loop of energy from being in a life and lifestyle that suits us. I'll give you the simplest thing. My office is 7 minutes from my house. I live in a rural area. There's a lot of people whose office is 30 minutes from their house, right? There are other people who commute right in the city and stuff. And they'll say, I had no choice, blah, 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 blah. Like, you do have choices. You're just not working hard enough or smart enough to find ways to apply your skills into circumstances that suit the way you want to live. And because you live on other people's terms instead of your own terms. I still have to live on other people's terms to an extent, but like my ratio is like 80-20 in terms of my terms versus their terms. So that's one thing. It's like if you're not clear on what actually creates contentment for you, you have no metric on what you need to be doing or not need to be doing. And then when you can achieve that baseline metric, which is like, wow, I'm doing something I care about with the skills that are mine that are special. You don't need to be the best at it. It's just what you do the best. And that is providing you with the income to take care of yourself and whatever your other dependents are within a reasonable amount of time, 40 hours a week, even 60. Some people like to work more. You've already hit a certain baseline of winning. It's simple. It really is simple. People think it's so goddamn complicated. I'm sorry. It's interesting that I started there. And then on the other side, you have to work with various routines that recondition your mind and body towards what is their natural state, which is safety, ease. And if you're a man and you have a masculine quality, your ideal avatar state is grounded presence and clarity, from which you then activate pursuit, leadership, structure, ambition, and purpose. But you always have to come back to that baseline place. If you aren't doing things, let's say, like learning how to listen to the language of your body, practicing breath work, but not just for the purpose of breath work. Breath work should you learn how to access stillness, right? Doing things. I love what I think it's Karden Rabin says, meditative practices instead of medicating practices. Every day, David, when I'm stressed, I have a choice between walking 200 yards to a fantastic coffee shop and having a cortado and a chocolate croissant, which I do sometimes, or not doing that, doing 3 to 5 minutes of any regulating practice I know under the sun, and then spending another 5 minutes dwelling in my peace and clarity, because the yearning for the other thing is always a lack of the yearning for the coffee and the chocolate croissant was because I didn't have access to my grounded presence and clarity, or there was some other pain I was trying to avoid. So yeah, it's always a this and that. You actually have to create structures, processes, and basically occupation in the world that meets your minimum needs in a way that fulfills you. But then you also have to be doing the internal work so that your body and mind feel like a safe, present, grounded, peaceful place to be.
Sounds so simple.
Right. Actually, here's the thing. It's simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I've been doing lately. I was on Brian Keane. I don't know if you know the Brian Keane or his podcast. He's great. He's out of Ireland. And as an American, I love his slang. And he says class and things like that. That's class. I'm like, she's the best, right? For me. I know you've heard that's so dumb, but I love it. Makes me feel great. And I was talking to him, if we go back to the emotional pain versus physical pain, external achievement, internal achievement. A man at his best thrills in the face of challenge. Thrills, right? We all have, although most of us don't have access to it, we all have had tastes of this. Even if you are a couch potato, who among us hasn't had the fantasy of getting into a fight with that person who hurt us or who deserved it, right? Or beating some opponent. Every masculine core person, whether it's developed or not, has this nascent excitement that rises at the idea of contest or challenge. And then we actually have an amazing hormonal and androgynous dopamine system that rewards the fuck out of it if we actually do it, right? Runner's high, that amazing feeling if you deadlifted, right? Competing in a race, all those things. Now, folks listening, David eventually wanted this chat to come into inner child work and attachment injuries and how that factors in. I'm going to do it right now. So, in an ideal world, if we were raised in a wonderful family where the first 5 years of our life were built by an absolutely foundational knowing that the world is an okay, good place, and that when we're scared and overwhelmed and beyond our wits' end or couldn't handle a situation, this is the first 5 years, there was someone there to hold us and take care of us and protect us, make us feel seen and held. By the way, probably the highest high I have as a man is when I provide grounded presence and non-verbal loving safety to my daughters. I feel like king. I really do. When my body can be a true haven for her of both placidity and power, again, it's the best. It really is. And then, of course, her body, their bodies respond. They regulate in minutes, no matter what they're in. So if the first 5 years of your life have that as the foundation, then what happens between 5 to really 21, but really 5 to 18, is the rules that apply in the first 5 years start to break down, and they have to change. Because the reality of life is that a human being needs to start shifting its protection and preservation away from mother and father to self and tribe. And a little person needs to start being exposed to adversity, which I define as any form of mental, physical, emotional, or spiritual pain, discomfort, with the right amount of support, without having to repress, disassociate, or otherwise escape the experience. And what happens is that if you could imagine a little role-playing games, Final Fantasy, you know how you get like health points, HP points, like over the course of the game as you accomplish things, you start out in the game with like 60 health points, right? By the end, you've got like 18,000 as you take on bigger bad guys, right? If you go through appropriate rites of passage that are all that can be anything from, they start out as a toddler going 10 feet away from mom or dad and then running back and feeling okay, right? It's that simple. It's these little adventures away that have fear and excitement or pain and danger associated with them, but it happened and it was okay. And it happened and it was okay. And it happened and it was okay. And holy shit, I can handle hard shit and I'm okay. And I can do blah, 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 right? Your health points, if you will, expand. And ideally, you become a young man whose foundation was love and safety. But then the edifice was, I can do hard shit over and over and over and over and over again. And not only am I okay, but my health points expand. And I'm a fucking Super Saiyan. All right? And I will then pursue risk and take challenge and look forward to adversity, or at least be ready for adversity, because in my very bones, I know I can. And if you apply this to athleticism, specifically in combat, whether that's wrestling, jujitsu, boxing, whatever sport you like, it's the same thing. You got to get your ass kicked for a while, but ideally you're not getting your ass kicked so bad that you break too early, because then you're going to stop. You need to get your ass kicked appropriately, preferably by a dojo of people that love you and care about you, so that you're like, fuck, that was hard, but it was also kind of awesome, and I'm ready to go back, right? Expansion. Similarly with lifting, right? If you lift too hard too soon too early, you get injured, you pull a muscle, you rip something, you get DOMS, and you're toast, right? The probe is the right amount of exercise dose so that you not only recover, you bounce back, you got bigger muscles, and you're ready for the next weight. So this is all to say that most of us men, unfortunately, had that process totally fucked up. And instead of being men that have the capacity and even desire to have that birthright of a thrill and anticipation of challenge, because our experience of it has been that it leads to our growth and our dopamine and becoming lions. Instead, we got fucked up from 0 to 5, learned the world was not a safe place, or learned that it wasn't reliable, learned that when we feel fear or emotional hurt, no one's there. And we have to patch those things ourselves when we don't even know how, between 0 to 5. And then worse yet, David, from 5 to 18, if your experience was anything like mine, it was basically an endless experience of like trying to be cool, fighting the clique, being bullied, everyone making fun of one another. For whatever love was there, that love was through like poking fucking fun at each other, no one knowing how to hold a container, no one formally creating rites of passage, athletics and sports often being just like pure will and grit, and no one actually being in tune to you, including your coaches, being driven by shame and guilt, right? And so instead of getting driven by support, love, brotherhood, comradeship, bonding through suffering, we just get fucking dumped on. And then we're supposed to come out a functioning man. We got a man body. We got man biology. We got a man potential to hurt and to do damage. But we don't have any of the actual experience to give us control over what we are.
So we lack the maturities, right? We lacked all the mature elements of being a man, because it sounds like what you're saying there, we have the man body, and some of us have the man strength, and we've gone to the gym and we've pushed ourselves maybe even physically in some ways that felt healthy. But actually then there's this piece of us that's inside that's still emotionally 5 years old or 8 years old, or still acting like we're 10 years old.
100%. And one of the things that you start to learn when you start to become self-aware, when you start to learn this stuff, is how often a overwhelmed and hurt 5-year-old is taking over the mecha Godzilla of your adult body and causing havoc. I'll give you guys all an example. Which one to choose from? How many hijackies do I want to talk about? Actually, one example is, I'm sure you've talked about the nice guy syndrome on here before, right? And so if you're in a partnership and you lose connection with your healthy masculinity, or more important, no one ever taught you how to inhabit it. When it comes to sex, why don't you just listen to this, guys? Because to me, once I realized this, it was so, we're not supposed to judge our inner child and stuff, but like, it was so repulsive once I vividly saw this in myself. I like killed it in a minute, and I'm never going back. And that is that usually we think that if we're a good man and we do the dishes and pay the bills and massage our wife's shoulders, that she should fuck us. Okay? Now, before I get into anything, does that sound like the strategy of a lion, of a hunter? Does that sound like the strategy of a lion, of a hunter, of a fighter? No, it doesn't. It sounds like the strategy of a little boy desperately trying to please mom so that she either isn't mean to him or gets him a present. Period. Full fucking stop. So, that's an example of you living in a perpetual state of your wounded inner child who, because that was the only way he ever actually got the affection he needed from 1 to 5, using that same strategy in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, because we always regress to our earliest wounds, folks. That's how we operate. Now, but here's the other thing. This is a nice thing about having an adult male body, is that usually through pure desire, natural and the blessings of natural instinct, most of us often behaved a little bit more lion-like in the first year of falling in love with that person, right? We courted them. We got them gifts. We tried to come up with elaborate ways. Not only did we courted them and got them gifts, we were really, because they hadn't become our mother yet, by the way, as far as our little child, we really were. We let them know how beautiful they are, right? We worked it. We were lions laying on the love, the affection that the feminine desires. We filled them with our desire, okay? Not with our expectation, right? Because that's what the child is. The child says, give me. You owe me. Give me. You owe me. Give me. Man never does that. The man, the best masculine energy, earns, hunts, seduces. And again, not to get what he wants, although that's the outcome. He does it because of the thrill and aliveness he gets from the process. So that's an example of it. If when we have attachment wounds and inner child ruptures, and those have not been, they're not conscious and they haven't been attended to, they will inevitably sneak back in and take over our adult Mecha Godzilla, right? Similarly, when we feel withdrawn from, and one of our attachment injuries from childhood was loneliness and that our parents weren't there, our mother wasn't there. When we feel withdrawn from, and that hurts us, the man would show up and say, hey, I feel you withdrawing. I want to understand this, and I want to know what you need to be able to come back. But that's rarely available to us, David, because the child's hurt so bad that in the withdrawal when a woman withdraws, what do we typically do, David? We either say, I fucking hate you, leave, bitch. Get the fuck out of here. Gross, I don't want you. We activate this inner, that's a 5-year-old. I see the moment my daughter's heart gets hurt by me, and meaning that, like, I'm correcting a behavior that really needs to be corrected, but it fucking hurts, man. You can see it. It's a harpoon to her chest. She looks at me with such rage. You did this to me, Daddy. She is fucking, she's a fighter. She goes, Leia goes right home. She fights right back. She's going to hurt this, what she thinks is the source of what hurt her. Okay. Whereas my other daughter, by the way, that's a sympathetic fight response that my older daughter goes into to protect herself against emotional injury. My other daughter literally just implodes. She goes into full sad face, belly down on the floor. Okay. That's her move when she collapses, although she's now learning a little bit of a fight that she becomes free. Long story short is that when in our adult relationships, when one withdraws, the boy shows up because we can't handle that pain, and he either attacks or he goes, I'm out of here. I'm out of it. I'm just out of this. I'm out of this. I can't be in this relationship. I'm out. She doesn't want me. I'm out. I can't handle. I don't know this because I don't know the secret language of the body for most men listening. But what's going on is you are experiencing such physical, emotional discomfort and pain in your body. And all you have are the survival tactics that you had when you were 3 or 5, that they are fully taking over the show in the present. The only difference is that your mind deludes you into justifying your behaviors.
And I wrote down here the protection from emotional injury, because I'm thinking of, like, and this is a gross generalization of men, but it's also my experience of working with men. As you said, men are more afraid of emotional pain than physical pain. Most men will take on a physical pain, like you have to lift something heavy.
A huge amount of it. A huge amount of physical pain, right? They'll even pride themselves on being like, look at this cut.
But if you ask him to be, like, vulnerably share his heart with someone, or even be in relationship with their partner and stand and listen to the criticism or her pain or her questions, that emotional pain is too much for him to endure, and he slips into exactly the responses you described, like either shutting down or counter-attacking, as I often call it. Like, if someone's criticizing them, they'll come back, or they'll start like shouting, anger, and so forth. And I guess I'm just saying that because it comes back into, again, these are the responses of this little child that never learned that it was okay, that they could handle this amount of maybe emotional difficulty and move through it safely.
That's right. In fact, and they couldn't. They literally couldn't. They were biologically, neurologically, physiologically, energetically incapable of it. And the reason why the residue especially takes over as adults is that just the brain is hardwired to regress under stress. I'll say that again. The brain is hardwired evolutionarily hardwired to regress under stress. Perfect example. If you are on a trail and your eyeballs think they see a snake, that message does not go to your neocortex. It does not go to your big new brain to interpret, first and foremost, whether it's actually a snake. Because evolution taught us that if it goes up to the newer thinking brain, too many times out of 10, y'all died. Okay, like it didn't work out. It was just too slow of a survival system, right? So that instead goes right to our hippocampus and to our brainstem, all right? And enacts a reflexive process. If you've ever been in this situation, hopefully most of you have been scared like this before, you're usually running away before you realize what you were running away from, because the brain is designed to shoot first and ask questions later when it comes to things like snakes. All right. And thank God. And then by the way, if your brain made the right decision, you're like, full. You might have a little shame at running away from a rattlesnake, but like for the most part, you're like, I'm glad I did that, right? But when it's not a rattlesnake and you ran away from a stick, then you just feel absurd. Okay. And you're like, oh my God. And you're embarrassed, and like all those feelings show up. But those are all after the fact. And as far as evolution's concerned, it doesn't care if you feel embarrassed, you ain't dead, right? Similarly, when we have trauma or attachment injuries and we develop stress, we develop coping mechanisms and defense patterns at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we will always regress to the earliest developmental survival patterns we laid down in our brain. And your neocortex, your mindset, your intellect has basically zero leverage over that part of your brain. And you all know this, guys, because you've seen yourself in a fight with your girlfriend before, or your spouse or your partner, whoever. You've been in a fight where you know you're fucking wrong. You've been in a fight where you know you're wrong. And you know you've been a dick. Or that you just have no leg to stand on. But the fight has started. And you feel under attack and threat. And your lower brain doesn't care if you were right or wrong. Your lower brain says danger. And she's hurting us. Or they're hurting us. And you all know this, guys, no matter how much you know that you're wrong, you fucking start slugging back. And you can't stop the fight because your neocortex and intellect has a snowball chance in hell of ever stopping your limbic system and your lower brain and your early developmental survival patterns, at least with mindset. The reason why I wrote a book is that there is a way to actually influence the system and change how you feel in your behavior, but you have to negotiate and remodel survival responses at the level they were developed. You can't do it from high above to below. And then at best, the fight's over. You take a half an hour-long breather. Maybe you need a day. And if you're a decent guy, you come back and you say, I was fucking. But it takes you an hour or a day for the survival parts of your brain conditioned from childhood to release their mandate to keep you alive, to protect you from the danger of that fight, for your intellectual, mature self to even come back online and apologize. And it sure as heck failed in the moment, right?
I'm going to give a little personal example of myself many years ago. My strategy is shutting down, like shut down emotionally, stop talking, not say anything in the face of an argument, and kind of like clam up or, shut down like a oyster. And it would take me like days to come out of that. I could ignore my partner and not say a word for days, even going up to weeks. One of my relationships fell apart maybe 10 years ago because I kind of did this for like months on end while we were traveling around the world. I just was like, I'm not talking about the problems that I'm feeling, and I'm just not going to talk about them. I just shut down, not saying anything. And when I did come out, and there's the times it took days, it would almost be this like quite slow, painful experience. And like, even then I like to be right. I like to always believe I was right. So even when it came that I kind of felt wrong, that I almost physically couldn't say the words that I'm sorry, or I couldn't really apologize, or I would, would like be a painful bodily experience to like admit that, I was in the wrong somewhere and so forth. And thank the Lord that I've come a long way. And those days are down to, hours, minutes. Sometimes in the moment I can make that switch. But a lot of guys, are just stuck in this, like, apologizing. Maybe they never apologize because they're like, well, no, I can see where I was right and I refuse to concede. I refuse to kind of acknowledge. And I guess the question I have is, like, is that even the question? It's like the first thing that came to me was like, how do I stop the fight? How do I stop the fight from happening? Because it isn't just this fight isn't just a relationship thing, right? This might be in your business with business partners or with your co-workers. It could be this emotional like attack or overload that happens kind of internally that takes you over. It's happening in many areas of our lives. And the response sometimes is dismissiveness or defensiveness or shutdown or pleasing even. And it's it can be big moments. I'm not telling you this, I'm telling you, listen to it. It could be big things. It could be the minute moments, when we just lean back from someone, or we're on a date and the girl goes to touch your hand and you flinch away slightly. It's all of these kind of spectrum of moments where this child, this emotional stuntedness kind of takes over and jumps into the driving seat and grabs the gear stick.
Yeah. So this is really important. So I'm going to try to answer this one really efficiently without wandering. I'm going to answer this in two parts. I teach a framework called awareness, interruption, and redesign. And for most folks listening, you may have heard the business axiom, which is you can't manage what you can't measure. And if you don't know it in business, if you know it in fitness, right? Like, everyone loves measuring everything right now, right? You can improve if you don't know how strong you're getting really without measuring how much weight you're lifting, right? You don't know if you're really improving if you're in the right cardio phase if you're not monitoring your heart rate or HRV, whatever. So everyone gets that in some instances, measurement, which is a synonym for awareness, right? What is measurement other than a confirmation of becoming aware of a piece of information that is vital, key performance indicator, KPI. If you are unaware of the patterns of your emotional, neurological, and physiological patterns, you are up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. Nothing David and I are talking about is fucking useful if you are out to lunch. And if you're a man, you're most likely an over-intellectualizer. The primary emotion you experience is frustration, annoyance, and humor, and lust, but nothing else. And your awareness of your body is nil, except for maybe pain and tightness. So you must become aware. And there's lots of ways to do that, right? I wrote a book called The Secret Language of the Body. It's not called a pile of biohacks, right? Or the quick and the down and dirty of regulating your nervous. It's called The Secret Language of the Body because you got to become aware, folks. So that's awareness. Then I is interrupt. You have to start interrupting. This is classic habit change. The habitual survival patterns, coping patterns, the one that David just described, right? The clamming up. You have to learn embodied and cognitive methods for stopping those trains before they leave the station. And those range from breathing to movement to stretching to self-massage to neurolinguistic programs. There's so many of them, right? We got dozens in the book. And then you need to do R, which is redesign, which you've already started, by the way. When you've gone from no awareness to awareness, and when you've gone from interrupting to just, as opposed to just following your endless patterns, you're already beginning to redesign. You're already beginning to change neuroplastic and bioplastic pathways so that you can learn new tricks, right? But then the redesign can get really intentional, really visualized, really practiced so that previous, let's just say, trails through your brain and nervous system start to become overgrown. The ones that are less useful, you're walking down them less. And new trails are blazed through your brain, paths through the wilderness that are much more functional. So that's the overall bit. And you need to learn this stuff and work on it through books and courses and teachers. That's like the big macro. But a very specific thing that I wanted to mention, David, and this comes from a from a hybrid of my work and some stuff that I was inspired by from G.S. Youngblood, is a practice. And can we put this in the show notes? I want to put a link to a micro course and free one that I offer called Emotional Cold Plunging. So to bring things full circle with physical pain and emotional pain, and how to start inhibiting typical coping patterns and behaviors like you just talked about, the clamming up, whether this is in love or business. It is not an simplification for me to say that every unhelpful behavior or pattern you have is a response to a physical, emotional experience in your body that your brain and nervous system has deemed absolutely dangerous, life-threatening, and unfeelable. And so most of your behaviors and actions, including that wonderful justification to be fucking right, is built. It's a massive deployment of energy to avoid the threat that's inside your chest and gut from childhood. So we talked about how men's emotional pain threshold blows, because it does. And emotional cold plunging that I teach essentially says this. Just like cold plunging, David, what is if someone's never done cold plunging before or cold showers, what is a typical first response when they go into the water?
Try and jump the fuck out.
Yes, David. That's right. Do you know you're the first person I've asked that question to in like a dozen interviews who just fucking spitballed it correct? I love you right now. I don't know why anyone else doesn't. It's like I'm trying to give them a pop quiz or something. This isn't complicated. Your ass goes into cold water, you become like fucking Daffy Duck and you levitate out of that shit and teleport because it's so bad, right? By the way, the other response is that people become immobilized and they start to almost suffocate.
Yeah,
they freeze,
like shake and
right. They
exactly.
shake it, and they almost can't breathe. They feel like they're being strangled. So that is the body having an instantaneous, reflexive survival response to what it perceives as an overwhelmingly awful experience of pain and discomfort called freezing cold water, right? Yet, what happens if, with a method, over time, incrementally, you are exposed to that cold water over and over again? What happens, David?
Just like if you take a cold shower every day, each day by day, you can stay a little bit longer, or the initial reflex lessens. It becomes less
Correct.
kind of pronounced and intense.
Period. It becomes less pronounced. That initial reflex starts to diminish. You get more used to it. And if you really stay committed to it, dare I say it, you kind of, maybe you never enjoy it, but you appreciate it. And you kind of enjoy, again, this is the thrill of being a man. You just went through some adversity and you finished it. And you're like, fuck yeah. I just did my plunge, bitch. Right? Or whatever. And you also get those endorphins. You know the benefit. And in fact, you feel more powerful because you know you can safely experience something hard. And again, the behavior of escape stops. Emotional cold plunging is applying the same principles. But this time instead, you are deliberately choosing to find and feel the underlying emotional awfulness in the pit of your fucking stomach and heart that your body has been trying to leap out of by any means possible your whole fucking life. And the micro course explains a little bit of that, and it will help a lot of people who try it. I will say this, that not everything inside of us is feelable by ourselves, right? We either need men's groups, coaches, guides, psychedelics, therapists, somatic practitioners, etc. There's all sorts of, and men need, like, this is some of the humble pie I'm learning right now, is that I'm reaching new trauma frontiers inside my body that I can't handle by myself. And I'm actually leaning on external support more than I ever have in my life because I need it to be able to, we can all handle pain better in group, period. Right? So, but if the way to escape the cycle is by going into the heart of the discomfort and in your adult man body with support, learning that that discomfort isn't lethal. And then all of the coping mechanisms built on top of them start to lose their grip on you. If you're just trying to do it from the top down by not clamming up without dealing with the actual thing going on inside, it's just a wrestling match and you'll always eventually lose, especially if the stress becomes too high.
I.e., you can't just mindset you can't just like willpower yourself mentally through it, or there's only a limited range of benefit of doing that. It needs to come from an embodied, felt experience or continual, gradual experience of feeling it to really have long-lasting change.
100%. And for three reasons, right? One is, we've all become very good at men, usually as functioning and disassociating from our feelings. And we can do it, right? Or you can even manually try to override, a shutdown or withdrawal spin and come back. But inevitably, let's just say the pressure, the energy, the heat, the fear, the something inside, it's going to come out sideways, dude. Like you might have had using your mindset, you might have had a victory or success in the direct thing in front of you, but then you're all of a sudden jerking off a lot more or drinking more, or something starts failing at work, or another conflict shows up or you have low back pain. Like the hydra of that pain inside you will find a way out. That's the first reason why it won't work in the long run, even if you can be successful in the short run. And the second one is it's a dumb strategy because you're using so much of your life force to constrain another part of your life force stuck in pain. Fuck that. I want to get out. I'm willing to go into the worst pain in my body so that I can reclaim it. And so that I don't have to spend so much of my prana and my chi and my thought and my time and my behavior avoiding pain. Because now I seize that energy back and the pain energy back, and the world better fucking watch out, David. Because when all of my energy is aligned towards presence and purpose, can't stop, won't stop.
And in this kind of reclaiming of the emotional piece that's, deep down, is that also then sending back up to the mind, for those men listening who maybe they struggle with like some really negative self-talk and self-beliefs, and by going to that core emotional piece, the pain that's felt in their heart and their abdomen and their solar plexus, does that kind of have like a bottom-up effect of really releasing even those mental stories and ideas and beliefs?
Yeah, I'm going to say 80-20, meaning that most of what your mind is doing, especially in terms of self-talk or even external talk, like the kind of self-talk that says, I'm a piece of shit, or the kind of self-talk that says, they're a piece of shit, most of that is the mind trying to rationalize and deal with painful feelings that it's either not feeling or doesn't know how to deal with. That's what the mind is doing. It's on a endless hamster wheel trying to interpret and explain, justify, and figure out why your body doesn't feel good. And most people don't even know their body doesn't feel good. Many even when they know their body doesn't feel good, they don't know what to do about it. So the mind just runs in an endless, impossible problem-solving effort. And so, again, the fuel for that negative self-talk starts to go away. But that's also why we teach bottom-up and top-down techniques. I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. When you can both start to rewrite your neural linguistics by paying attention to the way you fucking talk to yourself and think about others, while also becoming aware, right? You can't measure what you can't measure. The somatic feelings, sensations, and triggers, you'll start seeing it so fast. Whoa, I just felt pain in my chest, a vulnerable moment, a feeling of shame, and my mind instantly went into attack mode. Whoa, they're literally hand in hand, glove in hand. One is built on the other. But sometimes the negative self-talk will start producing negative feelings in the body and then perpetuate itself. So it is both. But yeah, you start making that body feel better and the head rarely has a reason to be a dick.
This is a recipe for reclaiming and really connecting to our own internal power and energy to create our life force that's been wasted all over the place into like channeling that into our purpose, our mission through, kind of healing the nervous system, as you often say in the book, but also giving us back focus and attention. Like, what's something I really got from what you've said is like giving back focus and attention to put on the things that are really meaningful and important to us as well.
Amen. And just, there's no greater resource than focus and attention.
I'm aware that time is running away and I feel like we can sit here for hours and talk about this and I'll sit here fascinated and take notes. But time is running away. We always have things we have to do. I'll do next. Big thank you to you, Karden, for this wonderful, I feel like it's for me, it's like a personal lecture almost, which I'm super grateful for. I'm like, okay, now I'll religiously really get back. I've been reading your book, as I mentioned before, and I've got so much value out of it and been really doing the practices religiously and noticing shifts and changes. So listeners, the book is fantastic. I'm listening to the audio version. Me and Bjorn listen to it in the mornings. But I'm sure the listeners are wondering where they can hear more about you, where they can buy your book, where they can work with you, if you've got any programs coming up.
Love it. Yeah. So the best place is for the free good stuff and to find out everything is on Instagram at Karden Rabin, Karden Rabin. I'm the only Karden around, so you won't have trouble finding me, for better or worse. And then the company that I have with my co-founder, Jennifer Mann, is SOMIA International, which is both our website and our handle, SOMIA International. And our flagship program, I started out the interview by talking about how we help people get unsick from a whole range of chronic diseases and syndromes and conditions. And so that's our biggest contribution for both. So if you're a man, and in addition to all of these things of the mind, heart, and soul that we've been talking about that you're working on, but you got fibro or gut issues or fatigue or migraines or chronic pain, it's this work that gets you better. And that's what our flagship program does. And then now I'm sure you have listeners around the world. I'm leading the first in real life workshop that I've led since COVID at Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health in the Berkshires. Martin Luther King Day weekend, which is January 17th, 18th, and 19th. That's called the Secret Language of the Body Immersion. I'm stoked about it. I'm so thrilled to be in real life with human beings again, because there's no better way to connect and regulate than in the flesh, right? You know that from your son, David, right? Imagine trying to soothe him through fucking Zoom, right? And so those are the ways, guys. And the easiest thing is to pick up the book, right? Get it from your library, download it on Audible. There's no better place to start.
Awesome. Thank you, man. Thank you. Big thank you for being here today and really sharing all this wisdom that's so useful to everyone around the world. Everyone can benefit from this work in some way. Every man can benefit from what you've talked about today.
And I want us to. It's up to us men to do our part to heal ourselves so we can heal the world.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And
listeners.
All right.
Oh, no, go for I was just going to say, listeners, if there's something in this episode that's really kind of lit you up, feel free to contact us and really tell us what it is that really taken from this episode, and share this with someone in your life. There's going to be a man in your life, a woman in your life who could really do with hearing this. So please feel free to share that with them, to share the love so we can help as many people as possible. Until next week, people, thank you and ciao, ciao. I want to say a big thank you for listening. It's people like yourself that really help get the podcast out into the world. especially if you're often sharing the episodes and the podcast with people that you feel just could do with listening, right? Can see a different way of being a man, maybe a different way of having dating lives and intimacy and relationships. So I want to say a big thank you. And if maybe after listening to this episode, you think, oh, there's someone actually who could really do with this, please share it with them, share the love. I'm really, really grateful. And if, you want to get in contact with me for any questions, or you want to talk about coaching or any working together, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram @theauthenticman_, or you can email me hello@theauthenticman.net. Thank you very much.